Okay, welcome to Winterviews, Series 2, Episode 3. I am your host, Catherine Silva, Cat for short. And this week we have the wonderful Sean M. Thompson joining us for a discussion about crime horror. How are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing good. My cat is licking my hand and generally being annoying, but I'm doing good.
It usually makes for a better time, I guess.
It does if she doesn't knock over all my equipment, which has happened.
Well, we had that issue, not necessarily knocking over equipment, but just being generally a nuisance with Todd a couple weeks ago. The cat was very present.
Yeah, they know when you have a thing you're trying to focus on, and I think they just think, well, I should be there because you should focus on me.
So. Yeah, they're silly. I wanted to give you a moment to sort of introduce yourself to our audience and let them know who you are, what you've written.
Yes, so I am Sean M. Thompson, soon to be Sean Malia Thompson. It's not like my name's changing; my byline is changing. Sean M. Thompson, Sean Malia Thompson. I run Nictitating Books. I'm the chief editor and owner. And through that press, we have done Paula D. Ash's We Are Here to Hurt Each Other. Recently, we did Tiffany Morris's Elegies of Rotting Stars, and I've done a couple of my own books. I have my first novel, The Demon, through Nictitating now. I have a zombie slasher called Goddamn Zombie Chainsaw Murderer, and full collection called Screaming Creatures, and I've been featured in Vastarian for an essay and a story, Hymns of Abomination, and other anthologies. And I tend to write kind of psychological, surreal horror with random moments of heavy realism and crime elements.
Lots and lots of awesome credentials to list there. Vastarian, huh?
Yeah.
That's kind of like a dream over here. That's awesome.
I know. I'm so pumped I actually got in. Wasn't for lack of trying. It wasn't my first time. I'll say that. I had to sub a couple times before I got some stuff in. So
yeah, that's so cool. So today we are discussing crime horror. My first question, just I guess for some people who might not understand the genre, is to discuss the differences between crime fiction and crime horror, because there is a difference between the two. So in your, how would you best describe the differences between crime fiction and crime horror?
Excuse me, I just had a burp. So I would say crime, first of all, to me, most people sort of know what it is. It's like, police procedurals, things about serial killers, things about bank robberies, prostitution, domestic assault, just about crimes. Often there's sort of a noir feel to crime fiction. You've got prominent authors like somebody like Jim Thompson, going with another Thompson, for instance, or someone like Thomas Harris. But Harris is actually interesting because that can be a segue into crime horror, because often the line is a lot thinner, I think, than people realize. Because if you take something like just for a social experiment, if you're in a group of random people and you go, what genre is Silence of the Lambs? And you just wait to see what they say. A lot of people say, oh, it's a crime genre, thriller, mystery. Some people might say horror. I think it's like gothic horror with police procedural elements. But it's like hard to say sometimes. So I would say crime horror, it's something that's kind of, it's got monsters or it's heavily gothic. And there are crime elements, but it's just slightly more horrific than I think a typical crime book might be. It's like maybe the serial killer stuff is just like a little more involved, like with the gore or with like the dread elements. What's interesting is I never thought I wrote crime horror. I just was writing what I thought of as horror. And
Mhm.
I'd notice how horrified people would get, like past the typical. And I started to wonder, like, well, why is that happening? And then I realized, like, oh, well, like I'm approaching the murders like not like a horror book necessarily. Sometimes I'm approaching them like a crime book would, where it's like getting into the nitty gritty of it. And that's
Mhm.
not everyone picks up a horror book thinking there's going to be like a realistic depiction of a murder.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's what I think. I think the difference is, yeah, crime horror is just like a little. I mean, the very obvious difference would be if there's like a werewolf or a ghost or a
Yeah.
demon. Like that's an
Yeah.
obvious one. But I think the subtle answer would be it goes just slightly harder than like crime in terms of the scary elements.
Yeah. Yep. I would agree. And it can be pretty nuanced at times to make the distinction because there are some pretty deep crime films out there that toe the line.
Yeah, like a lot of Gillian Flynn stuff is like it's just crime, and then it gets to a point where you're like, well, that's just horror though.
Yeah.
Like
Like that got dark real fast.
basically, yeah. Yeah, when stuff tends to get real dark, you're like, that's right on the line there,
Yep.
like
Yep.
Red Dragon or Hannibal. It's like there are parts of that where you're like, this seems a little harder than like a kind of typical beach read police procedural type thing.
Yeah. Yep. Um, so I guess the next question I have, which I did not put on the sheet, but I feel like I
Uh-oh.
should
All
ask it
right.
anyway because I've asked everybody else is what is it about crime horror that kind of draws you to want to write about it?
Um, that is a good question. I think the most interesting characters are flawed characters or complex characters. And as such, I don't know. I just think like good drama is when you're dealing with people that are slightly larger than life, maybe not so much more, but so if another novelist, say, would have a character who had, I don't know, robbed someone's house, I might have a bank robber because I'm like upping the ante a little bit. And I just think it's an interesting sort of thing to give people. I mean, alternately, I like writing what I think of as very scary people, like sociopaths or like murderers, and so that my villains tend to be, it's like my monsters tend to be very human. Like in Demon, for instance, I have this guy I call the Man in the Suit, and like it's very Twilight Zone kind of like a guy in a suit shows up and it's obviously the devil type of thing. But the difference is my guy will just like go around doing just like influencing people with like petty crimes and slightly more than petty. So it's like the way the characters approach things in a
Mhm.
semi-realistic way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
But oh yeah, but I mean, like, why crime horror? Yeah, I don't know. I'm just interested in crimes. I mean, not doing them, but it's just, I guess how to phrase it. It's like the stuff polite society doesn't want to talk about. I'm very interested in
Hmm.
because it's just this sort of like, it's like cars get stolen, people get beaten up. Unfortunately, people get raped, people get murdered. Um, any type of crime it happens.
Hmm.
So I guess part of that is also an attempt to. Sometimes I like to ground my work in some form of realism because it helps me stay connected to the narrative.
Yep.
Um, Even though then I might have a werewolf or I
Yeah.
don't know, a sea monster or something.
Crime book with a sea monster would be pretty epic.
I am writing a sea monster novel that I'm off and on with, but I don't think it's a crime sea monster novel because like that's a lot. I don't know how you would do that.
That's
It's
yeah.
possible. I haven't come up with it.
It's like a Captain Phillips situation with a sea
I guess.
monster.
I mean, I guess if it was like, yeah, if it was like a ship captain or like a pirate or something like that, like maybe. And then you're getting into is like a story about pirates, crime fiction, maybe.
I mean,
I guess technically.
it's not ancient, I guess, but it's like it's historical crime fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, So with that in mind, moving on to the next question, this kind of relates to what we were just talking about, but that's how do you use crime horror to unnerve your reader and make them feel uncomfortable in their own homes when they're reading your work?
Yeah, let me just go through my notes. So I have. There we go. Basically, I think you make someone that people can relate to, because that's, I think, the main way people. And when I say relate, I don't mean like it has to be exactly like, I don't mean like, oh, it's a red-haired guy with a beard and glad. Like, I mean relatable in the way that every human is relatable, and like,
Yeah.
you know, money fears, or just like fear of sickness or divorce or just something like that. So you make them a relatable person in this sort of universal way or semi-universal way, you know, like largely I'm writing about Americans. So it's like, it's typically aimed at an American audience who could relate to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like living in a certain stage or the politics, just etc. But then you unnerve them by you put that character in peril. So they're sort of picturing, well, what would I do in that scenario? Like a classic would be some sort of home invasion type thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like someone in an apartment or a house, and someone's reading it at the beginning going, oh, it's sort of like my house. And then suddenly someone breaks in and they're like, well, what would I do if someone broke in? And you sort of like go through that. You know, something like Breaking Bad, for instance, is like a good example. You get Walter White, who is very milquetoast, boring, kind of 50-something man, who then, you know, gets this awful cancer diagnosis, and then the show kind of goes from there to be like larger than life. I would also emphasize, as much as I've been speaking about realism, crime fiction is just as much a genre as fantasy or science fiction. So sometimes it does bother me when people are like, well, that's not realistic enough. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
right. But like, it's a genre still. Because
Yeah.
like most cops aren't like the heart of gold, like genius that's going to crack the most cops. It's just like, how much more paperwork? Whatever. It's fine. This is fine. I apologize to anyone in law enforcement. But it, you know, it's a genre. It's like, you know, it's just like science fiction, where it's like, and the science might not be entirely exact.
Yeah.
Know?
Yeah.
I remember, I think my girlfriend told me this. If you were crying in space, right, in 0 Gs, it would just pool like in little balls by your eyes. But the reason people don't have that happen usually is it would look really weird, and it would take people out of a scene where someone was like bawling their eyes out in space.
Yeah.
So that's why people tend to do normal crying in 0 G, because it's still fiction, and you're trying to have it, you know. It is cool looking, I will say, when like, you know, because it's just like these little tear balls that end up by your eyes. But
yeah, it sounds funnier than you probably.
It just takes you out of it. I forget what movie it was in, but I was just like, yeah, this is just taking me out of it, because I'm just only focusing on, oh, is that what would really happen? I mean, to a lesser extent, it's the same way, you know, people are smoking in Alien, and you're like, oh, wouldn't everyone just blow up instantly?
Yeah.
Like the second you lit a, but you're just like, don't think of, you know, like my favorite, Ridley Scott had a quote, I think from the commentary for Alien, where there's this one scene where there's like water dripping down and one of them gets murdered. And I think the director of photography or something was like, why would there be water in a ship? Like, why would there be like a rainstorm? It looks like, and he's like, what does it matter? It looks cool.
Yeah.
And it really is. There's a part in Alien where he's like, wait, why is there water just randomly dripping from the ceiling? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, there's, you know, had to be sewer-esque, I guess, for the,
because he was just doing a haunted house in space. But yes.
Yeah.
So that was my weird little diatribe about realism and genre. But yeah, I mean, another thing to unnerve a reader, very easy one, is you just portray crime even semi-realistically. For instance, I wrote a novella set in a haunted prison, And I got the sense when people started reading it, they were expecting it to mostly be about the ghosts. And meanwhile, I'm like, okay, so you get ramen noodle, like the seasoning packets, and you use that on the food because the food is terrible in prison. And, there's like the white supremacist gangs, and there's, the Latin gangs. And then it's like, just like you got your time in the yard. And like I was actually going into like prison culture. Like I did a little bit of research. So I got the sense from some people they didn't necessarily, they're like, look, I came for a haunted prison. Not for like the prison part, but I was like, well, you're getting the prison part because we're in a prison. And getting into mental health stuff as well in prisons.
Sure. Yeah.
I forget the exact number, but it was something horrifying. Like, God, 3 out of every 10 prisoners say they have mental illness.
Yeah. Well, that's.
And like, I don't even think they mean like depression. I think they mean just
like,
schizophrenic people and stuff.
But I think that's also, part of the whole justice system as well.
Yeah. But so that's just horrifying enough. So that's unnerving enough. Literally just being a regular civilian, doing even a modicum of research on just the criminal justice system.
Yeah. So a related topic is actually writing, coming up with characters that readers love to hate, or writing unlikable protagonists.
Well, I mean, going back to the prison novella, that was easy because it's like you just got a cage full of rapists and murderers and stuff. So it's like, well, that's easy enough. I did one of my main villains in Kitty, if you're gonna puke, don't do it on my lap.
Oh, I don't wanna.
Sorry, my cat was throwing up a hair. I think. Excuse me. So I like my main human villains in Farmington Correctional, which is the name of the haunted prison novella. It was this guy named, I think, Jacob, who was the head of the Aryan Brotherhood, which seemed like it's an easy in because he's just like, only white people are people. And you're like, yeah, that's okay. I hate that guy.
Yeah.
But he's not, I mean, he's just like a very unlikable. He's not like someone you love to hate. You just hate him. But I don't know. I like to write a good psychopath. I don't know how else to say it. My mom's a social worker, so I guess I have that mind that's sort of like good at reading people and good with like mental health stuff. So obviously being a horror writer, it goes to the other end of that. And like, well, what's like the most damaged someone could be? I tend to write basically sociopaths, but yeah, I mean, I think in crime horror in particular, you want to have someone, I mean, it's easy to have someone who has like a foot in reality, but then is larger than life. So I think of a novel like No Country for Old Men, for instance, Anton Chigurh, who's the assassin in that. He's real enough that someone like that probably existed.
Yeah.
But then he's so like just dead, like just dead-faced and just frightening and portrayed as almost a demon sometimes that you're like, oh, this is like very like over the top.
Yeah.
But he works as a character in like a crime. I mean, that's a good debate too. It's like No Country for Old Men, neo-Western crime story, crime horror Western. What is it? So,
bridging the gap between.
Yeah. But I mean, I like good complicated characters in general. And I think crime horror allows you to have very complex people. Like I have a few examples, for instance. If you have someone who you establish as an abusive husband and they murder that abusive husband, do you still have sympathy for that character? Or if someone has some awful accident, like they were drunk driving and they kill a family, but then they're the hero of the story, can you still have the sympathy for them? It's hard. They're difficult. it's like an agent would probably be like, maybe don't do that because they're harder to relate to. Or like a crooked cop, but then he's up against a serial killer. So it's like you're siding with the lesser of the two evils.
Yeah.
So that sort of stuff interests me.
Hmm.
And I think makes a good complex character and makes good crime horror. I mean, the classic example would be someone like Hannibal Lecter, who's obviously a villain,
Yep.
but is like so engaging. And like, since it's fiction, you're like, oh yeah, kill rude people. But in reality, you'd be like, well, that's a fucking monster. You don't kill people because they cut you off in traffic or whatever. But
No, but very multifaceted.
yeah, and that is another thing. It is fictional, so there is that element of no matter how real it is, it's still entertainment. So you have to take that into account as well. Hi, Kitty.
Hello, kitty.
Yes, she's back on my lap.
Mm-hmm. Hairball done.
I hope so. I don't care at this point. She can just throw up on my leg. Say hi. Say hello.
It's the cat's name.
Okay. Lily.
Lily. Cute.
Short for Lilyhammer.
Which is a fantastic name.
She's the little hammer. That's what it means in the Norwegian. Because she's very ornery. She's sweet, but she's very just like a little bundle of like energy, just like taut muscles all the time. Hi, kitty.
I was gonna say my own. Yeah, I think he's left and gone to another room, but
sometimes I get lucky and she'll actually just be asleep. But most of the time, the second my office door shuts, that's when the scratching on the door starts, and then I let her in, and then she's on my lap for 10 minutes, and then inevitably within 20 minutes she's back at the door wanting me to let her out.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, kitty, I've got like a headphone set up and all this crap, but they don't understand that. They're just like, lap. Now I leave. I want lap again,
Yeah, we can't do closed doors in this house. It doesn't bode well.
Yeah, I wish I could not, but it's just a sound. I live in Santa Fe. It's not like a busy city, but it's busy enough that you would hear like cars and stuff probably.
Yeah, busier than Waldoboro, Maine.
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah.
Where is that near, by the way, in Maine? I'm sure I asked you before.
So it is closest to Augusta, which is the capital.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, I know where that is then.
So following up with the character question, we have a question about crime, horror, and narrative twists. A lot of crime horror does involve some kind of a twisted ending, something that sort of gets turned on its head. Is this something that you are a fan of? And if yes, if no, why?
I mean, that's such a loaded question because it's
know.
like, I think literally, in my notes I wrote yes and no. I have other stuff, but I'm a fan of it if it's done well. I think the twist is abused. Like, one thing that bothers me about a lot of horror fiction, and I fall into it as well, is at some point, all horror fiction had to have, or all movies, shows, they had to have some twist.
Yeah.
And I don't love the fact that like horror, for years, probably still, has to have, so it's like when people think of horror, they're like, oh, what's the twist? And I don't love that because it's like, well, there doesn't need to be a twist. It can just be like, there's a monster. It's killing people. Then we killed the monster and we lived. But when it's done well, yeah, I really like it. And I think with the crime horror and crime, it's sort of, it's that interconnection of the mystery genre into it.
Yeah.
And, a mystery, like, a twist does make sense in a mystery.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
it just makes more sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything in particular, but like there are some movies I think of like I mean, there's a lot of them. There's one like Primal Fear, for instance, which I'm like, oh, I liked that twist. And
yeah, that was a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, Another one I debated, because I did Google, like crime horror books, and Fight Club came up, and I was like, I guess technically,
Yeah.
maybe. I mean, there is a whole thing about he's planning to blow up a bunch of buildings, so I'm like, okay, well that part, yeah,
Yeah.
but generally, yeah, I think it's probably transgressive horror, or sorry,
Hmm.
transgressive literature. But yeah, obviously, I mean, I'm not going to spoil Fight Club, but I'm sure everybody knows Fight Club.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, I think if it's done well, I personally I prefer like what I think of as a turn, which might be wrong. I might be doing twists and just thinking of it a different way, but I like when you add a tiny little element or a really large element. Um, that when you find it out, you go back and everything takes on a different kind of hue. Like everything
Yeah.
suddenly is interpreted in a slightly different way, because I think that holds up to rereads. Whereas like just an outright twist, I think a twist can work, but it has to be like worked into like you have to know it's going to
Yeah.
happen. You can't just
It's
write a book and then at the end be like, oh, a UFO showed up.
yeah, it's got to
Because
be
then,
set up.
right. Because then it's like, okay, cool. Why?
Yeah,
Unless it's a surrealist type thing, and then it doesn't matter, obviously.
sure.
But yeah, I mean, you know, I think it has to be good, but I do like twists and turns. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd never want to be like an M Night Shyamalan, although
Well,
I'll take
that's
them, take the
that was
money. But yeah, I
the
mean,
first thing I thought of was like, at least in my lifetime, you know, the Sixth Sense, which is not crime. Well, I guess there's an element of crime
yeah, I mean that's
in
the
it,
interesting thing is
but
when you really think about it, it's like you could apply, like in a lot of horror stories there are just like crime elements, but it's not crime. It's like you got
yeah,
one character that maybe deals drugs, and it's like, well, that's a crime thing. But then
yeah,
it's like, but then
but
it's
it's
not a
not the whole story
crime.
doesn't
Yeah.
revolve around it.
Right.
But yeah, that's like the first thing in my memory of my lifetime that was kind of like, ooh, a twist ending. We like twist endings, so everything has to have a twist ending.
Right. Right. I think what I resent is that, like, I swear sometimes the twist in a horror movie is there is no twist. And I'm like, the fact that we have to have that at all is just like, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how it is. You can complain about it, or you can just accept that that's how it is.
Yeah. Um so I guess this is technically a wrap up question, but it can take a really long time to get through this. And
Oh yeah,
this
that's
is a
fair.
very fun question. And that is examples of your favorite crime horror books, films, video games, like whatever medium
I mean,
you.
a lot. And on my nose, I wrote pause for laughter.
Mhm.
No. Okay. So films, Brawl in Cell Block 99 is an interesting one with, Jesus Christ, not Vin Diesel. I was about to, the guy from Swingers. I forget his name now.
Oh, Swingers. Vincent. Oh God, what's his name?
I should have written it down because I thought, oh,
I can
I'll,
see
I'll
him.
remember it for sure. And now I've Vincent. Okay, well, whatever, that guy.
Vince Vaughn. It's
Vince
Vince
Vaughn.
Vaughn.
Yes, Vince
Yeah.
Vaughn. Which is an interesting one because it starts as like a somewhat more normal, I think, prison thing, and just gets progressively more insane. And they like keep moving him to different parts of the prison that are getting progressively more insane. And
Hmm.
then like when he starts fighting people, it's just like he's gouging eyes out, and you're like, okay, well, I mean,
Yeah.
something like 1922,
Hmm.
the Stephen King novella and the film. Seven, of course, Seven's a classic.
Yep.
Seven, like that's a great example. It's like on the surface, Seven might be seen as just a crime, kind of a mystery film,
Yeah.
but then there's certain like scenes where you're like, well, that's fucking horrifying. Like I don't
Yeah.
see how you could see that as anything but horror.
Yeah. That's one that I probably watched at maybe too young of an age, uh but I still like it stuck with me. It stayed with me.
Yeah, I mean the ending in particular, and again, I don't want this to be the spoiled David Fincher movies
It's
interview.
also from like 97 or something.
It
So
is. I mean, okay, sorry everyone, cover your ears if you haven't watched
yeah.
Seven. There's a head in a box, so that's fairly horror to me, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
And the surrounding the crimes,
yeah, the whole biblical thing as
yeah.
well. Um, even something as simple as the fact that he like cuts off his, I think, his fingerprints or something.
Oh
Just
yeah,
little
that's right.
elements like that are like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Um, Silence of the Lambs, of course, that's a classic. Um, I would also add, like Hannibal, Red Dragon. I know Silence of the Lambs. It's there's certain things in it that maybe haven't aged amazingly.
Hmm.
Um, Sinister, I really like Sinister because that's more like a horror film that is also a crime film rather than a crime film that has horror in it.
Hmm.
Because it's like a true crime writer and that's like the character. So he's getting into research of murders and he's technically got evidence that he's keeping from the police, but then there's a demon that's like in these.
Yeah.
So that I like that. But then it's like, yeah, it's like right on the line there. It's like it's probably more just like a horror film, but there are little crime elements.
That one I have not seen, I'm ashamed to say. I
It's
know
good. Two is
the
terrible, but I
scene
love the
in
first
it,
one.
but
Mostly because of Ethan Hawke, because it's just
yeah.
like he's so good in it.
Yeah.
No Country for Old Men, as I mentioned before, it's debatable, but I do consider it kind of like crime horror.
Hmm.
Scream, and I have a little caveat now. Technically, any slasher that doesn't have the supernatural in it could be seen as a crime horror film
Yeah,
because it's
that's
just about someone wearing a mask killing people.
yeah.
But I really like Scream. I know people that are younger where they're just like, it does nothing for me. And I'm like, I get it. But for someone like, I'm 38. So I was probably 12 when Scream came out. And it was like, it's like that whole Night of the Living Dead phenomenon where it's like, if you
Yeah.
were around when Night of the Living Dead first dropped, you were like, holy crap. But now, obviously, it seems old hat because like everything was influenced by it. Same with Scream.
Hmm.
It's like, I really love it because I saw it like when I was a child and when that was
Yeah.
new. But someone
Yeah.
coming to it 20 years later, obviously, that's been done hundreds of times now.
Yeah. Although it's pretty cool that they have sort of brought it back and they are now doing new films in that
Yeah, I do like that
series.
they're basically doing Ghostface in Manhattan instead of Jason
Yeah.
Goes to Manhattan or
Yeah.
whatever. I do want to see it. I wasn't a fan of 5, not that this
I
is a
haven't seen
review
it yet.
interview, but yeah, I mean, Scream. Um, Something like Sicario, I would say, is more a crime film that's just so heavy that it almost borders on being a horror film because you're just getting into the realities of uh, just like cartels and like
Mhm.
the viciousness of the violence that they do. Like it starts. This doesn't give much away because it's the first 10 minutes, but Sicario starts. They find a house in Arizona and there's a body that's buried in the wall and the cops show up and start opening up the walls and there's like 18 bodies just like
Yeah.
in this one house in Arizona,
Yeah.
and that's what prompts them to start the investigation into, because they're fairly sure it's like drug and cartel related.
Hmm.
um but yeah, so something like Sicario, that's Villeneuve, who did the new Dune
Hmm.
and Blade Runner 2049. I think it's
Yep.
49. Yep.
Yep.
So yeah, something like that. Yeah, you're right. This is going to take a while because that was just films. All right, I'll try to go a little faster.
Yep.
TV, True Detective season 1, like incredible, of course.
Yep.
The Hannibal show,
So good.
I love it. I love it a lot. I love how overtly like just gay it is. I'm like, yes, I'm here for this. Because it's like, Thomas Harris is gay, and like it's not. It's like in the books that he writes, but not necessarily overtly.
Sure.
But I like that Brian Fuller was like, no, but we're just going to go fully overt with it. I appreciated it. The Outsider. the book and the show. I really like
Mhm.
that. I really like when it is seemingly like a typical kind of police procedural murder mystery, but then it's just like, yeah, it's like that X-Files thing of like, oh, it's
Yeah.
a killer, but then they do the thing and they're like, but his feet are like enormous, and then just something
Yeah.
weird like that, and they're
Something
like,
different.
right, and then like, oh, okay, so something like that. Uh, Tales from the Crypt is an interesting one. Not everyone would think of Tales from the Crypt as like crime horror, but like
Yeah.
some of the episodes, it's like it's a bank robber and he hides in a mansion, and it's just so there's a lot of setups that are like
Yeah.
crime things. Um, I guess Breaking Bad, that's another debatable one. Mostly
Yeah.
just a crime show, but you can't deny that within the first couple episodes, they're like melting a body with like
Yeah.
acid,
It
which
was
is
pretty,
fairly,
pretty
and
disturbing.
yeah, and Gilligan did work on the X-Files. Like that's kind of the connection with that. So,
Gotcha. Okay. I haven't.
okay, in terms of books,
And we've got
okay,
plenty of time,
yeah,
so
The Outsider, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, Red Dragon, Skullcrack City by Jeremy Robert Johnson. Again, it's got elements because it's getting into like corporate fraud, I think, but then it's also getting into designer drugs and like the drug underground type of a thing. But I love
Mhm.
that novel. Um, Something like Negative Space by B.R. Yeager again is mostly a horror book, but is dealing with like a weird drug that fucks people up and makes them see all sorts of strange shit. So just the
Gotcha.
fact that it's about drugs, I think, kind of puts it into like a crime perspective,
Okay.
even if it is more of a like teen coming of age type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Obviously, all the Gillian Flynn books: Dark Places, Sharp Objects, Gone Girl.
Mhm.
Love her. Um, Something like Broken Monsters by Lauren Bukes. Really
Yeah.
like that. She also did Shining Girls. Again, it's very similar to Outsider. I love the fact that it's like initially you think, oh, it's just like a serial killer, but then it's like, okay, but that's overtly
Yeah.
supernatural over there. Um, so there's that.
Yeah, I have Broken Monsters to read, and I haven't gotten there yet, but I've
I
heard many
like I really like
things.
the audiobook, yeah. Shining Girls, I know people like it. I tried, I couldn't get into it as much, but I
Okay.
liked the premise of it. Um,
I
what
think
else?
that was
Okay.
based on a TV series.
Yeah, they did. Apple TV made a series with
They
Elizabeth
did. Okay.
Moss. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so here's another debatable one. There's a crime writer from the 50s, Jim Thompson. Not my grandfather, even though he did have the same name. Rest in peace, Grampy. I did debate that at one point. I was like, is my grandfather secretly? He's not. They're not the same person. Um, he wrote a book called Pop 1280, which is weirdly funny, but it's about a small town Texas sheriff, and he just does everything in his power to not have to do work. But I mean, he takes it to its logical end where it's like there's a couple pimps that are bothering him. So instead of arresting them, he just kills them because he's
Oh,
like,
okay.
oh, easier. And then
Yeah.
he's like, I don't have to have any
Jeez.
paperwork. But just stuff like that. And you just realize as the novel goes, like, oh, this dude's a fucking absolute sociopathic monster. He's just like sleeping with like 10 married women and just like doing all this insane. But
Yeah.
his whole kind of like vibe is just very like, well, shucks, I don't know. Like he pretends to be dumb. He'll just be like, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm not saying you're right. But then he kills a pimp and you're like, holy shit, what? Like, so
Yeah.
it's a great one. It's weird. It weirdly holds up considering it was written in like 1950 as like a dime store paperback type of thing.
Hmm.
Something like Gerald's Game by Stephen King. Again, more horror, but it does start with like a husband who may or may not be about to sexually assault his wife, which
Oh,
gets
yeah.
into crime. But then she's handcuffed to the bed and just like he dies.
Yeah.
So it's like that everything past that is like, well, that's the horror part. Um, Zombie by Joyce Carol Oates. It's basically about a Jeffrey Dahmer type. It might
Okay.
even be about Jeffrey Dahmer. But it's just a very disturbing kind of like journal written in first person by a serial killer, but you don't see any of the murders. It's sort of like the lead up to like the first one, but you're
Hmm.
just following inside of his head and his like just his just messed up thoughts. So that's a really disturbing one, but it's more like the serial killer thing. Legion by William Peter Blatty, which is, I don't know if I consider it a sequel to The Exorcist, but it is like a tie-in novel.
Okay.
It takes place in the same place. It is getting into demons and exorcism, but it's getting into this guy they call the, not the Zodiac Killer, but they call him something like that. It's like
Okay.
the Gemini Killer, I think is what they call him. But then it's this thing of like, well, but that guy died, and then these murders are still happening. So is it a
Hmm.
copycat? And it's like
Okay.
we've got the print of a nun right here or something. So that's weird. Um, so I really like that one. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. At times, I consider that kind of like maybe that's more just post-apocalyptic horror.
Yeah, that's
Um,
kind of where I think it lies, but um
I mean, there's just certain elements like there's like I think a group of cannibals where I'm like, well, that, but you know, again, that's sort of more post-apocalyptic. Um, and then My Work Is Not Yet Done by Thomas Ligotti because it's about office culture and ostensibly an office shooting, but then it's Thomas
gotcha.
Ligotti, so it just goes nuts.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then games, I'll keep this a lot quicker. The Suffering, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 4, Alan Wake, The Darkness. I even count a cutesy game like Night in the Woods, which is like
Hmm.
you play as a cat,
Yep.
but then
That's
it's getting
actually one
into
I
like
had.
economic disparity and yeah, like someone might have been murdered, that sort of a thing. So
Yep. I was trying to think. I don't remember which Silent Hill it is. It might be Homecoming, where the character is actually a prisoner
it's
who is.
either Homecoming or Downpour, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember which one.
But
But
yeah, there is one.
yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean Silent Hill 2 um and 4 I think of in particular where it's like they're mostly horror, but then it's like certain plot points. It's like, you know, there's a serial killer that lived in this building in
Yes.
4, and
Yeah,
in
4 is
2, yeah,
definitely.
in
Yeah.
2 it's like, you know, this guy who, you know, I don't want to spoil that either. Again, it's a 20-year-old thing, but they are doing a
They
remake, so
are. Yeah.
don't want to give that
Which,
away.
um, and I had a very short list to contribute.
Okay.
Um, just, and if you haven't seen any, I definitely recommend. But recently, The Pale Blue Eye was one that we
Yeah, that
watched.
was the Netflix one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I
That
like
I,
Christian Bale, so I'll probably check it out.
yeah, it's really good.
Is it? Okay.
And it's definitely got sort of that it's crime horror, but it does have a sort of gothic twist to it, of course, because of the time period.
Yeah, and the Poe
Um,
thing.
Army of the Dead, which I guess you could also argue is kind of
I
comedic
did.
at the same
Was
time.
that the one in Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that one. Yep.
Yeah.
I think
Um,
they're doing a show. I read actually.
oh.
Um, I don't remember how I read. It was just I was on IMDb for some reason going through a list of something, and it was like Army of the Dead Lost Vegas or something, and I was like,
Huh.
what? And I'm like, was that the name of them? And then I'm looking, and it's like pre-production. I'm like, oh, so it's probably a show or something.
I mean, if I can get more Zombie Tiger, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that was great.
That was great. The Crow is
Yeah, no, The
on
Crow.
my
I forgot to
list.
mention The Crow.
Don't Breathe.
Yeah,
Just
it's true. I
yeah.
never saw the sequel, but yeah, don't. I remember. Oh my god, I have a short anecdote. We saw it in the theater, and it was like a very, you know, there weren't that many people in the, but there was some lady brought her little kid,
Hmm.
like kid like a 5 or 4 year old. And at one point, like one of the people that broke into the house is on screen, and he went, "Daddy!" And I was like, "Oh my god!" Like,
Oh.
it's just like holy shit.
Yeah, when people bring their kids to movies that
I
it just
mean, like someone got popped in the head. I'm like, don't bring your 4 year
yeah.
old to this, Jesus Christ.
Um gosh, I cannot remember what it is, but we went to something that was like an adult. It was an adult animated movie, I think. And
Okay.
there were kids everywhere, and I was just like, why?
Yeah. It's
Um,
always awkward. I mean, I get it. You know, it's probably maybe safer than leaving them without a babysitter or something. But at the same time, it's like, could you just like do something else?
yeah. Um, so then, and then the Purge series is another
Oh,
one.
you're right. Yep, The Purge. Yeah.
Um, and then this one is kind of, I have a couple that are kind of controversial because they do have a like, because a crime happened, it is like, um,
Yeah.
is everything is happening but the cell, which was
Oh, yeah,
the
you're right. I mean, that is about a serial killer, so I'd
weird,
count it.
very, very strange movie, but also very cool
It's interesting
visually.
because I don't think that director went on to do that much else.
I feel like I yeah, I don't know. I want to say that they did something else that was vaguely similar and was really like uh again visually stimulating, but I can't
Yeah, they might have, but
remember.
it's always interesting when someone that's so stylistic and unique, and they sort of just do like the one and I mean, obviously this person probably did more, but you know what I mean? They just have one film, and you're like, huh, okay.
Yeah. And then the other one is The Bone Collector, which is
Oh,
one,
right, yeah, Angelina Jolie,
yeah,
Denzel
one of my
Washington.
absolute favorite films, but it is scary. There are some seriously scary parts to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's just bones that they're collecting. I do think it's funny that like Denzel Washington is just like the premise is like sort of he's just like I'm picking this random cop and making her do everything. I'm like I don't think they'd let you do that or
Yeah,
even that's how that
it's
would go.
it's like he's
But
supposed to be some very, very gifted detective. And
yeah, I do love the part where it's like someone's been steamed basically and he's like
yeah,
cut off the hand like what the fuck why?
and the rats, that was another one. Ugh.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, just to add those to the mix.
Oh, no, you're not going up there.
So I then
Nope.
my second wrap up question is
Okay.
going to be what other subgenres of horror do you like to see crime paired with? Like, what are some of your favorite pairings?
I mean, any and every is my answer. I kind of just love, um, there's no way to phrase it without sounding like a creep. I love crimes. No, I just I like crime elements and police procedural elements put into what would be maybe traditionally horror stuff. I
Mhm.
just think it's interesting. But I mean, in particular, I guess the supernatural, you know, going back to someone like Lauren Bukes, where
Mhm.
you know, instead of just it's a man that kills children, it's like it's a man that kills children and somehow travels through time through a house.
Yeah.
It's like that's just I think that's really interesting because it's like you know I like police procedurals, but admittedly sometimes they bore me because they just get very like just like same.
Formulaic.
You know, it's just like
Yeah.
the perp broke in at 5:55, and we've got the partial print over here, and you're like, okay, and it's Law and Order, and you're gonna bump
Yeah.
bump. Not that I hate Law and Order, but you know what I mean. It's like there's a
I
lot of
do.
very
Yeah.
similar kind of procedural stuff because like it is admittedly more popular than I think just horror. It's debatable though
Yeah.
because it's like if we're going worldwide, I think horror is probably more popular. But if we're going like kind of America and the Americas, probably crime stuff is more popular.
Yeah. And that's, time thing too. Like back in the 90s, it was just you had police procedural all over
Yeah,
the place up through the 2000s, and now we're in
yeah,
horror booms. There's just horror everywhere. But
yeah.
like I
Not
remember,
that I mind. I like both. I mean, I of the two, I probably prefer horror.
yeah.
Um, because as I said, you know, I tend to get that is my one issue. I like, you know, like with say seasons 2 and 3 of True Detective.
Hmm.
I didn't like them as much because there wasn't that sort of like weird, like, is there an alternate dimension that just opened in the sky, or is this person hallucinating type thing going on? Instead, it was much more like someone got murdered. We're solving the murder. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's fine, but there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Behind.
but yeah, I like stuff that sort of plays in that space with where it's like crime, but then it just goes slightly over where you're like, okay, this is horror now though. Because
Hmm.
it's like there's like a decaying body over there. So
Yeah.
we're getting into like gothic kind of traditional stuff.
Yeah. Like some of my I'm not going to say fondest memories because that would be creepy, but
I know.
definitely some of like the earlier TV shows that I started watching that have definitely shaped fiction were things like CSI, Law
Yeah.
and Order Special Victims Unit, which were really, really, really dark in the early seasons, and then
Yeah.
kind of like I
They
don't know.
lightened it up. Yeah, it happens with a lot of stuff. I think to an extent that almost happened with True Detective where it was like so like dark, but then it got so popular that they
Yeah,
were like, I mean, there was other stuff too.
ease
Like they
off the
had,
dark and make it
but
really.
yeah, they tried to make it like, let's make it more a little like more normal. So I'm interested in season 4 that they're doing soon. If they're going to try to go back, I mean, I'm crossing my fingers they're going to go overtly horror, but I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't think it's going to happen.
I would hope so.
But I don't. It's. I guess it's set in Alaska and it's got like Jodie Foster and
Oh, well,
it's like a bunch of guys go missing from I don't know if it's like a scientific research center, but it's basically like some people went missing in Alaska and Jodie Foster's there with some other
well,
woman to investigate it. So I'm like,
I'm in if it's Jodie Foster.
oh yeah, no, for
Like,
sure. I just rewatched Panic
awesome.
Room the other day and I was like, this is a great movie. I forgot about this movie. Well, it
Yeah.
started because I was like, don't I own this movie? And I had that awful kind of 40 minutes where you go through your house. Like, I swear to God, I own this movie and I don't own this movie.
Oh,
And then I'm like, did I own it? And then I sold it? I don't know. So I ended up just watching it because I was thinking about it.
yeah. One of my favorites is the Brave one.
Yeah, yeah, I do own that. I know I own that.
Yeah. That's just I mean, not horror, definitely crime,
Yeah.
vigilante.
Yeah,
Panic
it's
Room
sort of
is
like a
definitely crime.
yeah. Sort of like a Death Wish kind of thing almost, but less problematic. I haven't actually watched the Death Wish movies because I just heard they're just so like he just murders everyone for no reason.
Yeah, intense, I guess.
Yeah.
um well, any current crime projects that you are working on that you don't mind telling
Yeah,
people
I
about?
mean, I don't want to, knock on wood.
Yeah.
I know some people say like, don't talk about your projects, but I'm like, I don't care. I just don't care. I am writing a crime novel that's just a crime novel. But admittedly, it's more just to see if I can do it. I don't really have a home lined up. It might not even get finished, or if it gets finished, it might not be any good. But I am writing one. Um, and then I have a mosaic novel that I'm planning to put out from Nictitating Books probably mid to late summer called They Never Find the Bodies in Whispering Pines. And that does contain my novella Farmington Correctional, which was published by Planet X Publications and is now out of print.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to put that in, and it's going to have Astrum, which is also from Nictitating as a 99-cent ebook. But that sort of has like occasional forays into crime horror because there's a couple
Okay.
things about serial killers. But it's almost like that Lauren Bukes thing of like, it's a serial killer, but
Mm-hmm.
so. But yeah, other than that, I mean, Demon is part of a series, and that I keep putting off finishing. But it's book 1 and book 2. The plan is to do it as a mostly first-person police procedural, with this detective character, Lucky Byrne, that I have invented. And I like her a lot because she's sort of like she just sort of talks like a hard boiled, kind of like, I guess, like 80s or 90s noir detective.
Mm-hmm.
But she's just a woman. So I have her say stuff that just makes me laugh.
Nice.
Like I want her to say, like, suck my dick a lot, just because I just always die when a woman says that. But yeah, but other than those three projects, yeah, it's funny. Like it comes up sometimes, but like I'm not always, I don't always set out when I'm writing, say, a short story. I'm not like, this is gonna have crime in it. I'm just like, oh, it's a guy, and then I come up with and then sometimes it's just like, oh, he got robbed, and
Mm-hmm.
the story just tells me to do that.
Yep.
And then it becomes like sort of a crime horror story. So that happens a lot. It's not like I set out with most of my novels, like, I'm going to make this a crime, and it just sort of happens.
Yep. Crime just happens, just like in real life.
It does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's about it, though.
Okay. Well, we are at the end of the program here.
Okay.
But I do want to thank you for coming on today and sharing all of your awesome insights about crime horror.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Um,
I wore my
and
glasses because we did talk about this off air. When I'm not wearing my
yes,
glasses, I look very angry. So,
yes, we talked about the like just staring at the
like,
screen with no
face
glasses
lock.
and like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is funny.
Right. I mean, I have blonde eyebrows. That's part of it. Is something about having blonde eyebrows. You just look more pissed off for no reason. I don't know why. It's something about the face. It's like when you have the more delineated eyebrow, people can
Yeah.
tell easier than if it's lighter, I guess. But yeah.
Um, so thank you all for joining us this evening. Next week is episode 2 of Winterviews. We are going to have Wendy Dalrymple on to discuss body horror, which is, we've been joking, it's on Groundhog Day. So we're going to, have to pen a groundhog body horror
There you go.
novel. But stay tuned for next week. We will see you then. Have a good night.